My name is Prophet Hubert Angel, and today I need to speak about something I've carried quietly for some time. There are things that come in prayer and bring peace. There are things that bring hope. But there are also moments when what you see does not comfort you. It warns you. It tells you that something may be approaching and that silence may no longer be the right response. What I am about to share concerns Captain Ibrahim Touare and the nation of Burkina Faso. For days, I felt an unusual heaviness in my spirit. I prayed, I waited, I questioned what I was sensing. And more than once, I asked myself whether I should speak publicly about it at all. But every time I returned to prayer, the same images came back. A young leader, a military uniform, a man standing firm under pressure. And around him is danger. Some of it was visible. Some of it was hidden. And some of it was standing much closer than it should have been. Then I saw something else. A dark rain. It was moving over a land marked by red, green, and gold. And in that moment, I knew I was looking at Burkina Faso. Now listen carefully. I am not asking you to believe that every image I saw must happen exactly as I saw it. I am not saying that this is an unavoidable future. Visions can speak through symbols, and symbols must be handled with wisdom. But the face I saw was clear enough to trouble me. The posture, the uniform, the determination in his eyes. It looked like Ibrahim Touare. But what disturbed me most was not the opposition standing openly in front of him. It was what seemed to be moving quietly behind him. I saw what looked like friendship. Then I sensed betrayal. I saw those who appeared close enough to protect him. Yet something about their presence did not feel safe. Then the atmosphere changed. Darkness moved across Burkina Faso. And what followed looked like confusion, pressure, and fear. I cannot tell you whether that darkness represents political instability, conflict, disaster, internal division, or something else. I will not pretend to know what I was not shown. But I do know this. The warning felt serious. So I speak today not to frighten Burkina Faso, not to attack anyone, and not to declare that disaster is certain. I speak because a warning can also be an opportunity to pray, to prepare, to become wiser, to protect unity, and to see danger before it reaches the door. And what I saw next began in a place unlike anything I had ever seen before. For several days before the vision came, something inside me would not settle. I could not explain it. There was no obvious reason for the feeling. Nothing had happened around me that should have created such uneasiness. And yet, every time I became quiet, the same weight returned. So I prayed. I prayed in the morning. I prayed late into the night. And every time I finished, I still felt that something had not yet been revealed. It was as though a message was standing behind a closed door, waiting for the right moment to be shown. I remember one particular night very clearly. I had been praying for a long time. My body was tired. My eyes were heavy. But my spirit would not allow me to simply walk away. So I remained there. I continued praying. I asked God for understanding. I asked him to show me why this feeling had followed me for so many days. And eventually, exhaustion took over. I do not remember the exact moment when I fell asleep. But I remember what happened next. When I opened my eyes, the room was gone. The walls were gone. The familiar surroundings had disappeared. I was standing somewhere I had never seen before. And for a few seconds, I did not move. Above me was a sky filled with a strange white and golden light. But there was no sun. There was no visible source of that light. It was simply there, surrounding everything. Beneath my feet was a thin layer of mist. And whenever I moved, the ground seemed to glow beneath each step. There was no wind, no birds, no voices, no sound of trees, no sound of people, nothing. The silence was so complete that I could hear the beating of my own heart. And yet, strangely, I was not afraid. That is something I still remember. Everything around me was unfamiliar. By every human instinct, I should have been frightened. But instead, there was warmth. There was peace. It felt as though time itself had stopped. I could not tell whether I had been standing there for a few seconds or for much longer. There was no sense of morning, no sense of evening, no sense of distance, only stillness. And then I understood something. I knew that I was no longer simply lying in the room where I had been praying. I knew I had been taken into an experience that was different from ordinary sleep. I looked around me. The light seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction, and the mist moved softly across the ground. Then something changed. The atmosphere became heavier, not darker, not frightening, but deeper. It was the feeling you have when someone important has entered a room, even before you turn around and see them. I felt a presence approaching, and immediately everything inside me became still. I wanted to speak, but I did not know what to say. I wanted to ask where I was. I wanted to ask why I had been brought there. But somehow, I knew that questions could wait. Because whatever was approaching me carried an authority that words could not interrupt. So I stood there, listening, waiting. And then, through that white and golden light, I saw the outline of someone walking toward me. Slowly, one step at a time. The closer he came, the brighter everything became. And with every step, the peace I felt became stronger. But so did something else. Reverence. A deep reverence that made me understand that this was not an ordinary encounter. I could no longer hear even my own thoughts clearly. All I could do was watch him come closer. And when I finally saw his face, my knees began to weaken, because in that moment, I knew who was standing before me. The figure continued walking toward me, slowly, calmly. There was no sound beneath his feet. And yet, with every step he took, the atmosphere around me seemed to change. The light grew stronger. Not the kind of light that hurts the eyes. It was soft but powerful. Warm but impossible to ignore. And as he came closer, I began to see him more clearly. He wore a bright robe. His face was serious, but there was compassion in it. There was something in his expression that I cannot fully explain. It was not anger. It was not sadness alone. It was something deeper. As though he could see pain that had not yet happened. As though he already knew the burden behind the message I was about to receive. Then he looked directly at me. And in that moment, my knees gave way. I fell down. I did not decide to kneel. My body simply responded. I wanted to speak. I wanted to ask him why I was there. I wanted to ask what he was about to show me. But no words came. My throat tightened. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. All I could do was look at him. And what struck me most were his eyes. There was love in them, deep love. But there was also a sorrow that seemed to reach beyond one person, beyond one family, beyond one nation. It felt like the sorrow of someone looking at people he loved, knowing that danger was approaching them. I felt peace in his presence, but I also felt reverence. A kind of holy fear. Not the fear that makes you want to run away. The kind that makes you understand how small you are in the presence of something greater than yourself. I lowered my head. For a moment, nothing happened. There were no words, no explanation, only silence. And strangely, That silence spoke more loudly than many voices. Then I slowly raised my eyes again. He was still looking at me, and I knew something was about to be shown to me. Something important. Something I would not easily forget. He did not begin with a long speech. He did not explain everything. Instead, he lifted his hand and pointed forward. The moment he did that, the space in front of me began to change. The white and golden light seemed to open, almost like a curtain being pulled aside. Behind it, another scene started to form. At first, I could not understand what I was looking at. The images were distant, blurred. Then they became sharper. And I could feel my heart beginning to beat faster. I looked toward him again. His expression had not changed. There was still compassion in his face. But now, there was urgency. And I understood that I had not been brought into this place merely to experience peace. I had been brought there to see, to witness, and perhaps to warn. I turned my eyes back toward the vision. And the first image became clear. I saw a wide land stretching before me. At the center of that land stood a young man. He was wearing a military uniform. His posture was firm. His eyes were focused. He stood like someone who had already faced pressure and had decided not to bow. Beside him, I saw a white lamb, and around that lamb, shapes began moving in the shadows. At first, I thought they were dogs, but as they came closer, I saw their teeth, I saw their eyes, and then I understood they were wolves. Some were far away, some were watching, some were waiting. But what disturbed me most was that a few of them were already standing very close. So close that they looked like protectors. And in that moment, I felt a coldness move through me. Because the danger was not only outside, some of it was already near. And as I looked at that young leader more carefully, his face became unmistakably familiar to me. It looked like Captain Ibrahim Touare. What I saw next became even more intense. The young man stood at the center of the vision. Military uniform, straight posture, eyes fixed forward. And the more I looked at him, the more strongly he resembled Captain Ibrahim Touare. He was not running. He was not hiding. He was standing. Around him was a wide stretch of land. And beside him, the white lamb remained. At first, I did not understand why the lamb was there. Then something entered my spirit. Responsibility, a burden, a people, a future that had been placed into the hands of a leader. The lamb looked vulnerable, but precious. Something that had to be protected. Something that could not protect itself from everything surrounding it. Then I noticed the wolves. There were many. Some stood in the open. They did not hide their teeth. They looked directly toward the lamb, waiting. Those wolves did not trouble me as much. At least their intention seemed visible. But farther back in the shadows, others were moving. Slowly, quietly, patiently. They were not rushing. They were waiting for the right moment. And then I saw something that disturbed me deeply. A few wolves were standing extremely close to the lamb. Too close. They did not growl. They did not attack. They moved as though they belonged there. As though they were protecting it. And for a moment, anyone looking from a distance might have mistaken them for guardians. That is when I felt a warning inside me. The greatest danger was not necessarily the enemy standing far away. The greatest danger might be the one close enough to be trusted. I remember thinking, do not only watch those who oppose you openly. Watch those who stand beside you when the doors are closed. Watch those who know your plans. Watch those who know your movements. Watch those who speak loyalty, but may be carrying another intention in their hearts. I am not naming any person. I was not shown a name, and I will not accuse someone based on a symbol. But the image was clear. Some threats were outside. Some threats were hidden. And some threats had come very close. Then, without warning, the entire vision changed. The wolves disappeared. The lamb disappeared. The young leader disappeared. And suddenly I was looking across another landscape. This land was different. I saw fields. Long stretches of green vegetation growing from reddish brown earth. The land appeared alive, productive, full of possibility. Then I looked toward the sky. Green, gold. Those colors stood out so clearly that immediately my thoughts turned toward Burkina Faso. Above the land was a golden star, bright, steady, visible from a great distance. For a brief moment, the entire scene looked peaceful. Then the atmosphere changed. From the horizon, dark clouds began to gather. Slowly at first, then faster. They moved toward the golden star. The light began to fade, and I watched the clouds cover it. But listen carefully. The star did not disappear. It was still there. I could see traces of its light behind the darkness. Then rain began to fall. But this was not ordinary rain. It was black. Dark water falling heavily across the land. The moment it touched the fields, the plants began to wither. People appeared in the distance. They were running. Some were looking for shelter. Some were calling to others. Some looked confused as though they did not know where the danger had come from. I watched families moving. I watched people trying to protect what they could. And everywhere the black rain reached, fear seemed to spread with it. My heart became heavy. I looked toward Jesus. I wanted to ask him, what does this mean? Is it war? Is it famine? Is it sickness? Is it political chaos? Is it something coming from outside the country? Or something beginning from within? But before I could speak, I looked again at the land. And then I noticed something important. Not everything had gone dark. There was one part of the landscape where light remained. The rain had come. The clouds had covered the sky. The people were afraid. But the darkness had not taken everything. And behind the clouds, the golden star was still shining. That detail stayed with me. Because I understood something. Whatever the black rain represented, it did not look like the end of Burkina Faso. It looked like a season, a dangerous season, a painful season, possibly a season of confusion, but not necessarily destruction without hope. And I began to understand that the warning itself might be part of the mercy. Because when you are warned before a storm, you have time to prepare. You have time to strengthen what is weak. You have time to protect what matters. You have time to pray. You have time to look carefully at who is standing beside you. And you have time to decide whether fear will divide you or whether difficulty will bring you closer together. I still did not know exactly what the black rain meant, and I will not claim certainty where I was given only symbols. But inside me, one message was becoming impossible to ignore. Burkina Faso may face a serious test, and the young leader had seen standing among the wolves could be standing at the center of it. Then Jesus turned his eyes toward me again, and this time he was about to tell me why I had been shown these things. Jesus looked at me again, and this time the silence changed. Until that moment I had been watching, observing, trying to understand what the wolves meant, trying to understand the black rain, trying to understand why the face of Ibrahim Touare had appeared so clearly before me. But then I felt that the vision was no longer only something for me to see. It was something I was being asked to carry, something I was being asked to speak about. And then the message came to me with great seriousness. A prophet is not called only to speak words that make people comfortable. Sometimes A warning must be spoken before people understand why it matters. Not to create panic, not to make people afraid, but to give them time. Time to pray, time to prepare, time to become watchful, time to correct what can still be corrected. The message I understood was simple. Do not frighten them. Warn them. Tell them to stay awake. Tell them to pray. Tell them to prepare before the moment arrives. And when I heard that, I understood something very clearly. This was not a message telling people to attack their enemies. It was not permission to accuse neighbors. It was not a reason to punish people based on suspicion. It was a call to wisdom, a call to prayer, a call to unity. Because fear can destroy a nation almost as quickly as conflict can. I looked again toward the image of the young leader. And I understood that protection would not come only through soldiers. Protection would also require wisdom, good counsel, discernment. People around him who valued the nation more than their own ambition. And a population that refused to let rumors turn brother against brother. I wanted to know more. So I asked the question that was burning inside me. When will this happen? When will this danger come? Is it near? Is it far away? Will there be time? But before I received an answer, the light began to change. The scene in front of me started to fade. The fields disappeared. The black rain disappeared. The star became faint. And even the figure standing before me began to move back into the light. I tried to hold on to every detail. I wanted one more answer. One more sign. One clear date. But none was given to me. And perhaps that was part of the message. Because sometimes a warning is not given so that people can calculate a day. Sometimes it is given so that they change the way they live before that day ever comes. Then everything went dark. And in the next moment, I opened my eyes. I was back in the room. My heart was pounding. My forehead was covered in sweat. And the first thing I did was reach for something to write with. Because I knew I could not afford to forget what I had just seen. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the room, but I did not feel as though I had simply awakened from an ordinary dream. My heart was beating hard. My breathing was heavy. There was sweat on my forehead. And for several moments, I remained completely still. I did not want to move too quickly. I did not want the details to disappear. So I reached for something to write with. And I began recording everything I could remember. The white and golden light, the strange silence, the presence of Jesus, the young leader in military uniform, the white lamb, the wolves, the red, green, and gold, the golden star, and then the black rain. I wrote it all down. Not because I understood everything, but because I knew I needed to preserve the images exactly as I'd seen them. For the next several days, I continued praying. And slowly, some of the meaning began to become clearer to me. The first warning concerned pressure from outside. When I thought about those wolves standing at a distance, watching, waiting, I began to understand them as a possible picture of external forces. Power does not always arrive carrying a weapon. Sometimes it arrives with a handshake. Sometimes it arrives through diplomacy. Sometimes through money. Sometimes through trade. Sometimes through security agreements. Sometimes through promises of support. And sometimes the conditions only become visible after the agreement has already been made. That is why the first warning I would give to Ibrahim Touare is this. Be careful with friendly hands that carry hidden conditions. Not everyone who smiles at your government wants your country to become stronger. And I want to be very careful here. I was not shown the name of Donald Trump. I was not shown the name of Marco Rubio. I was not shown the name of any foreign president, minister, government, or organization. So I will not put a name where the vision gave me none. That would be irresponsible. The warning was about pressure. Influence, and the danger of confusing friendship with complete agreement of interests. Every nation has its own interests. Burkina Faso has its own interests too. And leadership requires wisdom to know where cooperation ends and dependence begins. I felt strongly that Captain Touare must examine every agreement carefully. Every promise, every offer, every condition, especially those that appear too easy. Because sovereignty is rarely lost in one dramatic moment. Sometimes it is surrendered slowly. One compromise at a time. One condition at a time. One decision at a time. But then came the second warning. And this one troubled me even more. Because the wolves standing far away were easy to understand. The wolves standing close to the lamb were not. They were already near. They looked calm. They appeared almost protective. And that is when I understood that the danger might not only come from outside Burkina Faso. Some of it could come from within. Ibrahim Touare, do not spend all your time looking beyond the borders for an enemy. Sometimes the most dangerous door is open from inside the house. There may be people who speak the language of loyalty, but serve another ambition. People who stand close enough to know your decisions. People who understand your movements. People who know what happens before the public knows. And if such people place personal interest above the future of the nation, their closeness becomes a weakness. But listen carefully. This is not a call to become suspicious of everyone. It is not a call to arrest people because of rumors. It is not a call to punish someone without evidence. Fear can make a leader destroy his own house while trying to protect it. That is not wisdom. The answer is discernment. Good systems, accountability, careful judgment, and people around leadership who can speak the truth even when the truth is uncomfortable. The image of the wolves made me think about betrayal, internal division, a possible struggle for power, perhaps even an attempt to remove leadership. But I cannot say that a coup will happen. I cannot say that a particular person will betray Ibrahim Touare. I was not given those details. I was given an image. And an image is a warning, not evidence against an individual. That distinction matters because a warning should make a nation wiser. It should not make a nation paranoid. And as I continued praying, another thought became stronger inside me. If the danger is real, then protecting one man will not be enough. You must protect trust. You must protect institutions. You must protect communication between the military, the government, and the people. Because when trust collapses, even a small crisis can become something much larger. And that brought my mind back to the second image. The black rain, the fields dying, the people running, the golden star hidden behind the clouds. For several days, that image would not leave me. Because the wolves spoke about people, but the rain seemed to speak about something larger. Something that could reach far beyond one leader. Something that could touch ordinary families, farmers, children, workers, communities, perhaps the whole nation. And that is when I understood the first two warnings were only the beginning. Because the black rain carried two more warnings. And those warnings concerned not only Ibrahim Touare, but Burkina Faso itself. The black rain stayed in my mind. More than the wolves, more than the darkness, more than the fear on the faces of the people. Because when I returned to that image in prayer, I felt that it was speaking about something larger than politics. Something that could touch the entire nation. I saw the rain falling heavily over Burkina Faso. And everywhere it touched, the land seemed to suffer. The fields weakened. The people ran. The atmosphere changed. And I kept asking myself the same question. What does this rain mean? Is it war? Is it disease? Is it drought? Is it hunger? Is it economic collapse? Is it violence? Or is it something that combines several of these things at the same time? I was not given a clear answer. And I will not pretend that I was. But I understood the warning. A serious test may come. And Burkina Faso must not wait until the storm arrives before preparing for it. That was the third warning. Prepare for a crisis before you know its exact name. Because sometimes nations make a dangerous mistake. They wait for certainty. They wait until everyone agrees about the threat. They wait until the emergency is already visible. And by then, the cost of preparation is much higher. So when I think about the black rain, I think about practical wisdom. Food, water, medicine, hospitals, security, emergency planning, protection of farms, protection of roads, protection of communities. Not because I can tell you exactly what will happen, but because preparation is never wasted when a nation is facing uncertainty. Ibrahim Touare, if this warning reaches you, do not only prepare for the crisis you expect. Prepare for the crisis you do not expect. Strengthen the systems that ordinary people depend on. Ask difficult questions before the difficult day comes. What happens if food prices rise suddenly? What happens if harvests fail? What happens if hospitals become overwhelmed? What happens if violence closes roads? What happens if fear spreads faster than the truth? These questions are not signs of weakness. They are signs of leadership. And then I began to understand the fourth warning. The black rain was not only falling on the land, it was falling on the minds of the people. Fear was spreading. Confusion was spreading. People were running in different directions. And in that moment, I understood that the crisis itself may not be the only danger. Division could make it worse. Rumors could make it worse. False information could make it worse. Anger could make it worse. Suspicion could make it worse. When people are afraid, they become easier to divide. One group blames another. One community turns against another. One political side sees every disagreement as betrayal. One rumor becomes a fact before anyone checks whether it is true. And suddenly, the nation begins to weaken from the inside. That is what troubled me. Because a country can survive a storm, but it becomes much harder when the people stop trusting one another during the storm. I looked again at the golden star. It was behind the clouds, but it was still there. That detail became very important to me. The star had not been destroyed. It had not fallen. It had not disappeared. It had only been hidden for a time. And that is why I do not see this message as a declaration of doom. I see it as a warning with hope still inside it. Burkina Faso may face darkness, but darkness does not mean the light has died. A nation can go through fear without surrendering to fear. A people can go through pressure without turning against each other. A leader can face danger without becoming cruel. And the government can strengthen security without creating injustice. That balance matters. Because sometimes when leaders are warned about betrayal, they begin to suspect everyone. When they are warned about instability, they begin to silence every disagreement. When they are warned about enemies, they begin to see enemies everywhere. But that is not what I am saying. Wisdom is not paranoia. Security is not cruelty. Unity is not silence. And loyalty cannot be forced by fear. If the people of Burkina Faso are to survive a difficult season, they will need something stronger than fear. They will need trust. They will need discipline. They will need truth. And they will need leaders who can remain calm when the atmosphere becomes emotional. I saw the black rain, but I also saw the light that remained. That means there is still a choice. There is still time to prepare. There is still time to strengthen the country. There is still time to pray. There is still time to bring people together. And there is still time to prevent a crisis from becoming a catastrophe. That is the part I do not want people to miss. A warning does not always mean that the future is fixed. Sometimes a warning is given precisely because the future can still be changed. And that brought me to the final part of what I felt Burkina Faso needed to hear. Because after prayer, after warning, after interpretation, there must also be action. After everything I had seen, the wolves, the black rain, the fear, the hidden light, one question remained in my heart. What must be done now? Because a warning has little value if it leaves people only with fear. A true warning should lead to wisdom. It should lead to preparation. It should lead to action. And the first thing I felt strongly was this: Captain Ibrahim Touare must place every major decision before God. Not only the decisions made in public, but the decisions made behind closed doors. The agreements, the appointments, the security choices, the people allowed close to power, the plans that may shape the future of Burkina Faso for years to come. Leadership becomes dangerous when confidence replaces discernment. A man can be courageous and still make the wrong decision. A man can be loved by the people and still be surrounded by poor advice. That is why prayer must not become ceremonial. It must become a place of reflection. A place where pride becomes quiet. A place where difficult questions can be asked. And Ibrahim Touare must be very careful about the people closest to him. Not suspicious of everyone, but careful. There is a difference. Choose people who can disagree with you honestly. Choose people who are loyal to the nation before they are loyal to their own position. Choose people who will tell you the truth when everyone else is applauding. Because one of the greatest dangers around power is not always betrayal. Sometimes it is silence. When everyone around the leader becomes afraid to speak honestly, the leader begins to see only what others want him to see. That is dangerous. Burkina Faso must also strengthen protection around its leadership. But protection must never become an excuse for injustice. Do not punish people because of rumors. Do not accuse people without evidence. Do not let fear become a weapon. Security should protect the nation, not divide it. And while the country thinks about political threats, it must also prepare for ordinary people. Because if the black rain represents a wider crisis, then the first people to suffer may not be politicians. It may be farmers, mothers, children, workers, the elderly, people who already live close to hardship. So prepare food systems, prepare water systems, prepare hospitals, prepare emergency responses, prepare for disease, prepare for poor harvests, prepare for disruption. A nation that prepares early gives its people a better chance when pressure comes. And there is another thing. Young people must not be forgotten. Africa is young. Burkina Faso is young. And when young people lose hope, they become vulnerable to anger, to manipulation, to crime, to extremism, to anyone who promises meaning where they have found none. So listen to them. Create work where possible. Give them responsibility. Give them a place in building the nation. Do not only speak to them when there is an election or when there is a crisis. Give them a reason to believe that the future belongs to them too. And then there is corruption. Corruption may look smaller than war, but it weakens a country from the inside. It destroys trust. It steals resources from hospitals, from schools, from roads, from families. And when a crisis comes, a corrupt system breaks faster. So if Burkina Faso wants to become stronger, integrity must become part of national security. Not only soldiers, not only weapons, integrity, accountability, fairness, trust. These things hold a country together when pressure comes. And above all, the military, the government, and the people must not allow themselves to be separated, because division is exactly what turns a difficult season into a disaster. If people begin to hate one another, if every disagreement becomes betrayal, if every rumor becomes truth, then the black rain becomes heavier. But if the people remain calm, if leaders communicate honestly, If communities refuse hatred, if religious leaders call for peace instead of anger, then even a serious crisis can be survived. This is why I would call on churches across Burkina Faso to pray. I would call on Christian leaders to pray. I would call on Muslim leaders to pray. I would call on every person who truly desires peace to refuse the language of hatred. Prayer should not become a tool for politics. Faith should not become a weapon against neighbors. This moment requires something deeper: wisdom, restraint, unity, and courage. Captain Ibrahim Touare, if this message reaches you, do not dismiss it simply because you do not know me personally. Do not accept it blindly either. Test it. Pray about it. Think carefully. Look at the people around you. Look at the condition of the nation. Look at where Burkina Faso is strong and where it is vulnerable, and prepare. Because the greatest strength of a leader is not that he never faces danger. It is that he sees danger early enough to protect his people. And to the people of Burkina Faso, do not allow fear to become your master. The storm I saw was dark, but the star was still there. The light had not died. That is why I believe there is still hope. There is still time. There is still a future. And perhaps that is the reason the warning came before the storm. I am not saying these things because I want you to praise me. I am not saying them because I want to prove that I am more spiritual, more correct, or more important than anyone else. I am saying them because I believe a warning has value only when it helps people protect what matters. And what matters here is not my name. What matters is Burkina Faso. What matters is Captain Ibrahim Touare. What matters are the families who wake up every morning hoping their children will inherit a country that is safer, stronger, and more peaceful than the one they received. I am also a son of this continent. I love Africa. I love its nations. I love its people. And I believe Africa has not yet written its greatest chapter. That is why I cannot speak about danger without also speaking about hope. Yes, I saw wolves. I saw darkness. I saw black rain. But I also saw something that must not be forgotten. The star was still shining. The clouds covered it, but they did not destroy it. And perhaps that is the most important part of everything I saw. Burkina Faso may enter a difficult season. Pressure may come. Division may try to enter. There may be moments when people begin to question one another, question their leaders, and even question the future of their nation. But darkness does not have to become destiny. A warning is not necessarily a sentence. Sometimes a warning is an opportunity to pray before the crisis, to prepare before the shortage, to strengthen unity before division, to choose wisdom before fear. Captain Ibrahim Touare, if this message ever reaches you, take every major decision before God. Guard the people around you with wisdom. Protect your nation without allowing fear to rule your leadership. And remember, a country is strongest when its people believe they still have a future worth protecting. And to Burkina Faso, do not let fear divide you. Do not allow rumors to turn neighbor against neighbor. Do not allow hardship to convince you that hope has disappeared. The star I saw was hidden, but it was still there. So I leave you with one question. Is this a future that cannot be avoided? Or is this warning being heard early enough for Burkina Faso to change what comes next? Only time will answer that. But until then, pray, prepare, stay watchful, and never surrender your hope.